Welcome to another episode of First and Nole. We are live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Ariya Massoudi, Roberto Aguayo, and Curt Weiler joining you. Florida State, 45-38 win over the Florida Gators. And boys, we are 9-3 to end the regular season. 5 straight victories. We appreciate those of you watching on all of the different platforms. This show will also be available on demand on podcasts on Apple Pod, Spotify. You can rewatch it on YouTube and everywhere else you get your favorite podcasts. We want to shout out Curt and I. Berto, I don't know if you were tuned in today, but the United States, big win over Iran, 1-0. They're going through to the knockout rounds of the World Cup. A lot of people doubted it, but we're proud of that. And if we have some time at the end of the show, we'll chat about the U.S. and Netherlands maybe, and what a tournament it was and has been for the U.S. men's national team. But congrats to those guys, and a big congrats to FSU on Friday night against the Gators and snapping a 3-game losing streak. Curt, you were covering it. What a big statement from Mike Norvell here in year 3 to cap off one of the best regular seasons FSU's had in a decade.
Yeah, it was an impressive showing. I think we knew it would be kind of the big test of the final 5-game stretch. I think it's not to say that Florida State wasn't impressive the prior 4 weeks, but there were reasons why they were as impressive as they were, and Florida was going to be a real test. We knew what Anthony Richardson was. We knew the challenges he presented, and I think also, Florida's offensive line, Florida's defensive line, they had some pieces that were going to make things tough and beyond. Everybody talks about, you throw in the rivalry game. I think we thought this would be that could play more of a factor than it did in the Miami game. And credit to talk about response. You can't ask for much more than how Florida State responded coming out of halftime, how Florida State responded after losing that 14-point lead. It's built. The response was on display, and capping off, definitely one of the more impressive seasons in recent memory.
Roberto, it's been a while since Florida State has had a season like this. Just right after you left, really, the Noles had continued some of the success that your team and the run that you guys had built. What were some of the similarities as you're kind of looking back on the year that you noticed between the teams that you played with under Coach Fisher and some of the same traits that this Mike Norvell-led Florida State team had this year?
Yeah, we haven't seen this. Really, our last good season was 2016 when we went to the Orange Bowl. And to see the guys, the way they played this weekend especially, and like we talked about last week, it could have been a blowout, but it could have been a tight game. And really, it was a tight game. And I kind of expected it because Florida's coming off that loss to Vanderbilt. They made, a couple dumb mistakes in that game, which caused them to lose. But they're a good team, and we hung in there. And we, at the end of the day, we got the W, which is all that matters. But we haven't beat Florida in a long time. I don't know if you guys saw, they made someone said, oh, like, why is Florida State rushing the field? Like, they beat a 6-5 Florida team. But the seniors now at FSU have gone through, Jimbo left, then Taggart, and now it's Norvell, and they saw a bowl streak, a 36 streak of bowls come to an end. And I don't even have to talk about it. The years, these past couple years where it's been kind of like, oh my gosh, Florida State losing to so-and-so and whatnot. But to see them come out and pull out a 9-3 season and finish the way they did, it brings back a lot of similarities to when I was there. And it's just a catapult to these next couple years.
Curt, let's talk a little bit about how the Noles were able to find success against the Gators, because I think, we've talked about this on some of our other podcasts leading up to the game on Seminole Sidelines yesterday. 2 nights ago with Charlie Ward. We all had questions about the back half of this FSU schedule, right? Was it the Seminole team that had improved, or was it a byproduct of some of the teams they were playing? I think the answer was probably a mixture of both. But either way, the Gators were going to present to you a challenge that you hadn't seen since before your final bye week of the season. physicality, Florida had it. They played tough in the trenches at the line of scrimmage. But where did you think Florida State found that success offensively? We'll start with that against this Florida Gators team.
I mean, we can kind of start by saying it was kind of a vintage Jordan Travis performance. I think we've kind of talked throughout the season about, I think whether it's trying to make sure he stays healthy and limit the hits he takes, whether it's him wanting to prove that he can be a pocket passer and doesn't have to use his legs. We haven't seen a ton of that from Jordan, but on a night where, Trey Benson hit a couple runs, there were a couple explosive runs, but the run game wasn't as consistent as it has been. Florida did pretty well there. And on a night where the receivers made some plays, but also had quite a few drops and definitely let Jordan Travis down some in that regard. He had, how many ridiculous runs? His first touchdown was where he tiptoes the sideline. I don't know how, pulls out some kind of like sidestep dance move that was ridiculous. The other two ridiculous. The one in particular, neither of them were touchdowns. It looked like both of them could be, and there were weird situations where they thought he was sliding. I thought he was more avoiding a player, but the one where he gets three pass rushers on him like right away and escapes, and just it's been funny all season, really throughout Jordan's tenure, to see defenders thinking they have him. I tweeted early in the year, I remember, like, we could make a highlight package of road games and Jordan Travis kind of opposing fan bases cheering because they think they're about to sack him, and he just pulls off his Houdini. I think I tweeted Saturday night, I was like, can we just start calling these like Travis acts instead of Houdini acts? That's what they are. He was ridiculous on a night where Florida State needed him, and I think he desperately wanted that win against Florida, and I think a lot of it came on his shoulders and legs.
Roberto, were you getting some flashbacks of Jameis escaping the pocket a couple of times in his career?
Oh yeah, a lot of flashbacks to the plays that Jameis used to make. But and I remember because I was watching it. My family was down here for Thanksgiving, and I told my brother, I was like, dude, you know who he reminds me of? I was like, he's putting on a Johnny Manziel type of act with the scramble and keeping the play alive. And I was like, oh my gosh, Ryan's about to hit a 53-yarder, and then he almost scores. And he got gypped out of those two touchdowns where he pulled out at like right at the half-yard line, which he deserved it. But all in all, he kept the play alive. And those have been rolling around all social media all this week. But tremendous play by him to keep the play alive. And in a game like that, in a moment like that, where a shootout, where it's the highest scoring game in all of history of Florida State. You don't really see that. You haven't seen that off ever, I should say. And it was definitely a game where it was action packed. It was all offense. And I remember when we scored our second touchdown, and it was funny because Ryan kicked off after we scored, I think, our second touchdown, and then he went to go. He had to tackle the guy, and we were rewinding it because we thought it was, Ryan made the tackle, obviously kicker making a tackle, but we rewinded it and we saw the tackle, and then we turn it back onto live, and it's 14-14, and we're like, oh my gosh, like they scored in like a matter of like 30, like we just like rewinded it for 45 seconds. It was a shootout. But, it was a fun game. It was good to see the offense, the whole team just really play 4 quarters of football. And that's what it was going to come down to. And it really came down to the end, that final drive. And it was good to pull out the victory.
Yeah, it was maybe a touchdown saving tackle by Ryan. I think he might have got hurt on that, I think, because he didn't do kickoffs in the second half, and definitely was he made a field goal and however many extra points in the second half. He made all his kicks in the second half. He missed the field goal in the first half, I think, not long after that. But yeah, he was cutting through some stuff.
Yeah, he I don't want to say too much, but
no, that wasn't why I was saying that.
He did get a little bit
hopefully he can go
bruised up on that tackle. And it always happens. Like every time you come you leave with a bruise, a bump, and it affected him. That's why Max was kicking off the rest of the game. But he stayed in there for field goals and extra points. And we needed it, honestly. And, he missed one early, but he came back and finished out strong. There's honestly, it's tough. It's a full operation. So we need the long snapper and the holder, and they've let's just say not as good as in sync as they should have been leading into the game, which may have led to the missed field goal. But a lot behind the scenes that people don't know, and it was a bummer seeing him miss that first one, but he came back that second one and he drilled it, which we needed the points, and was huge in the end. So, but yeah, I mean, there's like so many. That's just one play we can talk about. There's so many plays. All these guys on the team made plays, but we came out with a victory, like I said, and that's all that matters.
His team offensively too, guys. I think it was a balanced attack, not just on the ground, where for the 7th straight game, Florida State's gone over the 200-yard mark rushing the football, which again, Berto, you played, Curt, you've covered it for a while. If you can run the football, you're going to have success offensively. Like there is a direct correlation between teams who have great offenses and being able to have great rushing attacks as well. And yes, Jordan Travis, his legs were really important, which really cool to see, by the way, Florida State unleash Jordan, just kind of go for it. But also Trey Benson, I thought, was really good. And I thought the balance of those two all year long, and Treshaun Ward and, of course, Lawrence Toafili, mixed in, has given Florida State this dynamic attack that we hadn't seen in quite a while, and certainly not last year in the way that we had hoped to see it. Curt, when you look at the way that Benson impacted this game and his ability to read the line and sheer physical ability, it was clear Florida didn't really have an answer for him on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he was somewhat more than I would say a lot of times he has been, especially lately. He was fairly big play reliant, but I think definitely, I mean, the one on not the touchdown, the one that set up his first touchdown where he throws, is it Kamari Wilson, I think, aside, the talented freshman safety at Florida. He literally just takes him and kind of uses momentum, shoves him. I mean, it was I think a big body guy like that, as the game progresses, can really, I mean, wear on a defense. I think you saw that. I mean, he also had the game-winning touchdown. I think I noted on Twitter, I think that was the first time he had 20 carries. That was the first time a Mike Norvell running back at FSU has had 20 carries in a game. He definitely prides himself on the committee and sharing the wealth and not relying on any one guy too heavily. But he's definitely down the stretch relied on Trey more and more, and you can see why. I mean, I think he's not too far off where to play in the bowl game. I think he would probably be the first 1,000-yard running back at FSU since Cam Akers, which I know would be special to him as a fellow Mississippi native who he grew up kind of a couple years younger than, idolizing in Mississippi.
Berto, he gets better and better, doesn't he? Every single week, it seems like. The more touches you give Trey Benson, the more game-breaking ability he has.
He does, man, and to crazy to hear Brock Osweiler on the call saying he brought it up, saying he started out as the third string running back. It was Treshaun Ward, then Toafili, and then him. And, dealing with injuries for Treshaun, and then, Toafili coming, being the starter, and then him being the backup in the middle of the season. He was able to get more reps, and then he ended up, making some plays. And honestly, early on in the game, when he made these big runs, Ricky was like, dude, honestly, he's like, I might buy myself a Trey Benson jersey. It kind of looked like, what's his name? Number 3 back in the day. I used to wear his jersey for Pop Warner. No, not 3.
How old are we talking? Because
no. It reminded me of 6. Frank, not
Greg Jones.
Greg Jones.
Okay. Yeah, that's who I was thinking you were gonna. I mean,
right? Leon Washington and Greg Jones.
Leon Washington. That's who I was thinking of. Leon Washington, Greg Jones. He's a big back. I mean, he's not small. He's not. I mean, I would say he's shifty enough, but he's a big back. And the way he runs, I mean, he's on kick return too. So they're not going to put a slow guy out there at kick returner. So he has the speed, he has the size. I mean, he has all the product of being an NFL back, and the way he's been playing, finishing out this season. I hope he gets that 1,000-yard, benchmark to surpass that and be in that group with Dalvin and all these other guys. So we'll see, but I think this isn't his last. He has a couple years of eligibility, right?
Well, that's a part of the big news, Curt. I know you're itching. You wrote an article about it, but it's not just Trey, right? The Seminoles have a couple of guys that have decisions to make after the bowl game.
Yeah, so he's only technically a redshirt sophomore. He was at Oregon for 2 years, and then here for 1 year. But he honestly, he wasn't. I think he had 6 total carries at Oregon. He had that knee injury that he worked his way back from, and I know was fairly limited there and kind of buried in the rotation there. It's an interesting situation. I think you talk to people, and some people will talk about. I mean, I view running backs as different from anything else in terms of there's definitely a shelf life for running backs in the NFL. It feels like there's a pretty severe drop off after the 30, 31, 32, somewhere in that. They can't go until they're 40, like quarterbacks, like kickers, some positions can. So it's an interesting debate. I mean, we talked to him and Jared Verse about it. They're roommates. I actually didn't know that they're roommates, but they talked about the interesting thing. Both of them who have decisions to make. Jordan has a decision to make. It sounds like some of them are going to do some talking, not just with family, not just with coaches, but kind of amongst each other. That's what Trey and Jared alluded to, was I got to kind of talk to teammates. And you wonder if the pursuit of something bigger could persuade some guys who wouldn't otherwise come back to think more heavily about it. I know Jared's got probably higher draft grades than either of those two, probably anyone else. I mean, he's a potential first-round pick according to some mock drafts, but those mock drafts are also not – the teams aren't doing those. So it'll be interesting to see what feedback they get. We won't kind of hear what feedback we get. It's not normally shared, but and how they consider going through the process, because, I mean, we've talked about how special this team could be next year if the right guys come back.
It's always around this time where, finishing the season, preparing for the bowl game, this is when those decisions are being made. And I remember when I was a redshirt sophomore, much like Trey is now, and had eligibility, or I guess the opportunity to leave. You got to play, you got to be in school for 3 years. That's the requirements. After that, you can leave. So, I remember considering it, thinking it was after my, I was the finalist for the Groza. I lost by 2 votes. And then it's like, okay, well, I already won the Groza. I was a finalist. I basically placed second in the voting. What more do I have to prove here? But the main thing for me, and the conversation I had with my parents and with Coach Fisher was, my family, my parents, my mom and dad wanted me to graduate, wanted me to come out of school with a degree. And, Coach Fisher, and this was a good selling point. He brought up to me, he's like, if you leave early, we're not going to be able to bring your brother in here. And he's like, if you stay, your brother's going to be able to fit in and come in and, start off right away. So that, I talked with my brother, I talked with the family. And to be honest, my mom, the big thing that she wanted was for me to come out of school with a degree. So, and for kickers, it's a different situation for Trey, right? Short shelf life, 31, 32, that's kind of like the cusp. But, for me, it was like, well, get my degree and then I can go in and play, later on. But you always risk, will I have a bad season? Will my draft projection drop? Those are all the things that he has to consider. And right now is where they're coming in, meeting with agents, talking with all the agents, and getting ready for that decision. But they also got to consider where if we stay, we might have an opportunity to go win a national championship. And you're only in school, 4, 5, at minimum 3 years. And to win a national championship and be a part of that history, that could be huge. So there's going to be a lot of conversations with the families, but also within the team, and to see what they need to do.
What
I wanted to ask, how much from your time within the program was that? I mean, were guys talking to each other about that? Was it something where guys wouldn't know for the most part until decisions were made, or they would kind of like get input from other teammates?
Yeah. So really, it was kind of that my freshman year where um, that conversation was like, okay, well, we did this. We went to the Orange Bowl. We produced. We have a highly touted quarterback named Jameis Winston, going to be the leader. And I was coming up. I was replacing Dustin. To be honest, though, it's kind of like hit or miss, right? You're basing, at least when I was there, you're basing the future off of how good these guys were in high school, right? I never kicked the ball in college, right? I was the number. I ended up being the number like 4 or 5 ranked kicker in the country my senior year, and then obviously Jameis was, if not one, top 5 pocket passing quarterback in the country. So yeah, that's high school football, but you haven't proven yourself in college yet. But we had a lot of guys that built that foundation: Rashad Green, Xavier Rhodes, Christian Green. These players that were heading into their senior or junior years that were leaders and were going to guide us. And we just had a lot. But that's the thing. No one really knew. Like, okay, yeah, PJ Williams, Ronald Darby. They were big playmakers in high school. But now that I look at it now with the recruits that we're getting and, potential, like right now I saw we're 17th in, the recent class coming in this next year. But obviously we got to go through the transfer portal and see what we can get. But if I'm a recruit, or if I'm a freshman coming in, or if I'm one of those guys that are debating, hey, should I stay or should I leave? I think you have to consider what the possibilities are for next year, because we're ending on a high note. And then looking back, we could have easily beat Clemson. We could have easily beat, who is it?
Wake and NC State.
We could have beat all those teams, right? And, we're a couple plays away. It's not like, oh, if we did it. No, it's like we were in those games and we just made a couple mistakes. But these are the things they got to consider. And really, no one expected us to win the national championship in 2013. I don't know if I don't know when you guys, like, what you guys thought. Oh yeah, projected, or even like we were in
that year. Like when we beat Clemson that year, everybody was a believer.
That's when everyone.
Not coming into the season.
No,
coming into the season, it was a talented but freshman quarterback who hadn't played a lick of college football.
Exactly. So there was no expectation. Yeah. There was no, like, we weren't even a dark horse to win the national championship. But after we beat Clemson, that's when we even surprised our own selves. We were like, whoa, we basically obliterated Taj Boyd's Heisman hopes. After that, he wasn't the same. And, that was it was the snowball effect. We went out, beat Pitt. We won games by a lot, and the snowball kept going. And then when we went into Clemson, it was our first real test. We beat Clemson. That snowball got really big after that, and we just kept it rolling.
Yeah, I guess I had a question, and you guys were just talking about it. It triggered it. Berto, when was it on your radar that you could be a second round pick? Like, what were the conversations that you were like, because you did choose to come out early. Yeah. And I guess I've always been curious as to when you kind of knew that it would be a good decision for you, because not many kickers get taken in the second round. So, I mean, that is a unique opportunity for you individually too.
Yeah. So my redshirt junior year, obviously after the year before deciding, if I should leave early, the next year, I graduated, I got my degree. And, really it was kind of like, well, what else do I have to do? This is what I wanted to do. I graduated. Now my brother's coming in behind me. Really, the only thing I really had to consider was, do I want to stay here and be able to play with my brother on the same team, right? It would kind of be the same thing with Dustin. I would be the senior, redshirt senior, and he would be a true freshman and that was the one discussion. But really, it was like, I had a lot of decisions to make, and it was like, well, nothing else really is going to boost my draft stock. And then when I spoke, I ended up choosing my agents, which was at CAA Sports. They told me, I was going to be projected high. I was obviously high, but as a kicker, you think like, oh, high, maybe like mid rounds. But they have good connections in the NFL, and they were like, he's projected between the second and the fourth round. And when I heard that, I was like, well, I mean, you can't get much better than that. I mean, the last guy to go first round was Jano in 2000. So after that, it was like, well, let's go make money. And this is before NIL, right? We weren't getting paid, so it was like, all right, I graduated. Like, let's go to the NFL. But honestly, though, the one conversation that Coach Fisher, and now looking back, I probably would say I don't regret my decision, but I would probably think about it a little bit harder and a little bit, now hindsight, right, 2020. But he would always say, you're never going to get these years back, right? You're in college, you can come back, but you're going to be older, right? You can get a degree, you can come here, do online classes, but this, 4 to 5 years, people do their master's, 6 years, whatever, of school, you're never going to be able to get back, right? The NFL will always be there. That opportunity will always be there. And at 21, I thought, right, I could rule the world. I could, you know what I mean? I was ready. I was like, let's go. I want to go to the NFL, right? This is like, I'm done. I'm here. Like, I've accomplished everything I needed to here. But really, I could have probably gotten a master's degree, had another year of maturity of really when you're 21, you're still young. And then, I would have been a year older, a year wiser, been a leader on the team. You never know where, how that impact would, obviously it's just one person. I don't know if I would have impacted the team that much, but been able to groom my brother, be there with my brother, help him adapt. And, he would have been a redshirt instead of a true freshman, which I go back and I always say the redshirt year helped me so much. If I would have started as a true freshman, I don't think I would have had the accolades and the records that I had. So yeah, I mean, if I would go back, I would probably have stayed that extra year, free schooling, and that, the NFL would have came. But obviously, that's why this, looking back, if I am able to talk to these guys, or even guys, kickers in college right now, reach out to me and say, hey man, what do you think I should do? And I'm like, that's the same thing Coach Fisher told me. Hey man, you're never going to get these years back. And, I'm a mentor to them. And, but I've walked through those, paths, and I've been in their situation, so I can relate to them. So yeah, man, it's very interesting. A lot of fans don't really know, like, oh, this, but there's a lot to consider, and it's a lot of like, what if I do this? What if I do that? So definitely, it's a lot to think about. Yeah.
I don't want to speak for the people watching, but I doubt many of them would mind if you started having some of those conversations with some of these guys at Florida State right now, making these decisions.
Exactly. So I mean, I don't know what I saw Jordan Travis say he was going to make an announcement December, or like, when was that? Something about he's making an announcement, or someone thinks he's going to make an. I don't know.
Roberto knows something we don't, guys. That's all right. We won't press you on it. We won't press you on it. That's okay. I'm sure Jordan would be like, hey, Berto, shut up. Hey, look, we all hope Jordan comes back. I know as Florida State guys who cover it, you played, a fan growing up since I was a kid. And Curt, you've been covering this team a while. You graduated from Florida State. It's been a pleasure to watch Jordan Travis, whether he goes pro or decides to come back. I think we all selfishly hope he comes back. Mm-hmm. But he has been one of the most fun quarterbacks for Florida State fans to have watched. And I think he's probably launched himself into one of that upper echelon. You're not going to compare him and say he's Winky Ward or Winston. I don't know if he's quite Ponder or EJ, but he's in that like breath of top 10 FSU quarterbacks that I think will be revered for a very long time.
statistically, I think he just had the best season by not one of those 3W guys. I think this season he's had is better than any Ponder or EJ had.
Yeah.
I've got some
And
notes.
at the end of the day, those guys won national championships, and that's what helps them. That's what puts them on the other echelon, like the next level, the next tier. But the thing is, and if I'm talking to those guys, if I'm talking to Jordan Travis, it's different now. You guys have NIL. Like, you guys can make money in college, right? So I don't know if you saw RG3 came out and said if Texas offered Bijan Robinson, $6 million or whatever, which obviously is legal now, like, stay, man. Like, you guys can be a powerhouse, but a contender. Like, this guy is good, right? And that's what's going to take to offer him to stay at Texas. And now with the NIL money, now if he stays, he is the face of the Seminole, team heading into 2023, and the hype just builds, and it's just going to bring more and more hype to the team, everyone around them. And I know this is probably what their agent is telling them, their mentors, their advisors around their families. So it's different now than when I was there. There was no money that was being able to be given to the guys. So now, like, you can get all these NIL deals, and that's going to make a difference. So we'll see.
Well, and Jordan's capitalized on that about as much as anybody. I mean, he's out and about he's for over a year now. He's had kind of a marketing agent who's I think he played with you, Roberto. I think he was a linebacker there. Joe was there. A good story I wrote about a couple months ago, about a month ago. If you haven't read it, I think I talked to him. But yeah, I think he's well set up in that regard, where I'm sure a one-time payment thing wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
But he's already so well set up, and he would lose a lot of that if he left. That think that he is set up in that regard. I mean, truthfully, would be in the preseason Heisman conversation.
100%. Now that you bring that up, yeah, you're right. I gotta give Joe a call and see, hey man, we gotta keep this guy at FSU, man. He's and hey man, like, he's gonna be on the Heisman watch list. Really, there's only been, last season he did okay. I'm not saying okay and bad, but like, he did well. We didn't have the season as good as this season. This season, he really had a good year. If we stretch out the whole season, consistently. But if he has another year like this with, what he's finished on this year and what the team has finished on this year, and if we can get a good team going in the next year, get the freshmen coming in, get them ramped up, get them up to speed. You don't know what could happen.
Well, and the wild card for me is the transfer portal window. I know finally they have windows, which I think is good for everybody, that you cannot just enter and be recruited out of the transfer portal at all times. I think it's like a 45-day window, starts next Monday. And Norvell's done well there without results on the field. I think, and I'll probably write a column, something to the effect later in the week, what he's done in the portal paired with kind of the proof of concept now coming off of a 9-win season, I think whatever holes Florida State has, depending on decisions guys make and things like that, I think he'll be in for even more of maybe the cream of the crop type guys if he wants them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, guys, let's talk a little bit too about this season as a whole. 9-3 for FSU. And Berto, we talked about it early, a couple minutes, but let's expand on it, because this year for Florida State started off really hot. You beat LSU, emotional win at LSU, at Louisville, with your starting quarterback out, and Tate Rodemaker taking over. And you're at 4-0, and all of a sudden you're humbled a little bit. 3 games in which you felt like, in at least 2 of them, if some different things break your way, you might come out on top. For that team to respond the way that they did, right? To be able to come out and to go to the bye week and kind of rehash a lot of the issues that they were having, get healthy, and then come back and have a 5-game win streak to end the year, I thought showed a lot of resilience and a lot of buy-in from the group under Mike Norvell. And that's something we haven't seen, I don't think, at the end of Jimbo's tenure, Willie Taggart's tenure, obviously, and early on in Mike Norvell's tenure with the COVID and having to try and navigate through that. This team seemed to be as mentally tough and as bought in as we've seen from any Florida State program and team in a long time. And I think it's only going to build that foundation for next year, because right now FSU seems to be such a great landing place for recruits, for transfers, and really for anyone who wants to take that jump forward. To me, this season was one of my favorites, not just to cover, but to watch in quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, we keep talking about it and what, the potential we have, and it's just night and day difference, especially from Taggart. And speaking about Taggart, he just got fired at FAU. Goes to show. It's just when it's all right, especially when I left. The difference was when Jimbo left and then Taggart came in. I could see it from just the TV and from afar, and I would go to practices. I lived in Tally for a little bit, and I would go to practices and see it, and then my brother would confirm how, hey man, like I remember when I was around the team when you were on, and I was in the locker room and I was around those guys. I would hang, at the house after games, and your bond was different than it is now. We got guys not buying in, and to me it was just kind of like, man, like we were blessed. I didn't have to go through that. We were self-policed. If someone was slacking, we're as weak as our weakest link, so we would get them right. And it also has to do with the coach. The coach is a big thing on a team, because at the end of the day, he really runs the lay of the land, where how long we're going to practice, when we're going to practice, who they're going to bring in. For the big thing was the guys that Coach Fisher would bring in during preseason and during the season to come talk to us. And obviously you got to have pull and you got to know people. And I'm giving a shout out to Dr. Elko. I don't know if people listening to the show have ever heard of him or have read his book or have heard him speak, but he's talked to, the thing he told me, he's like, I was a real, this is Dr. Elko. I wanted to study success and why championship teams would win. Like what made the difference between them and a team that was mid-tier or didn't win. And he studied teams for the longest time. He was with the New England Patriots. He was with the Baltimore Ravens. He showed us the championship rings. And he found what really made a successful team, a unit. And he came and he would talk to us. And one of the biggest things, and I still kind of hold it into my life, and especially if you're in a team environment, is he would come in and he would say, all right, at the end of his talk, right, he would say, all right, coach, pick a leader on offense, a leader on defense. Sometimes he would say on special teams, but it was mainly offense, defense. And Coach Fisher would say Jameis or Rashad, or on defense it was Jalen or Christian or whoever. And he would come down and he would say, call someone out. And this was in front of the whole team, all the coaches, right? That's who was in the room, in the team meeting room. And he's like, call someone else. Call someone out. Who do you need more from? Who is slacking? This is the time to do it. And everyone would just sink in their seats, like you start thinking about like, oh shoot, what did I do wrong? Did I go to, did I eat right? Did I make, weights? Did I miss class? And people would call, other guys out. And I remember, I want to say Jameis called out, the roommate of his. I'm not going to say the name, but, people would call out roommates, and you're like in yourself, you're like, oh my gosh. And then Dr. Elko would say, all right, what do you need from him? And they would say, hey man, like, you're doing this off the field and this off the field that we can't have. If we want to win a national championship, if we want to win games, we need you. Like, you can't be doing that. And basically like out him in front of the team, but saying like, I'm doing this because we need you. And it would out everyone in front of the team. And so everyone would know, even the coaches. But at the end, Dr. Elko would say, all right, tell him. And then that's when the whole phrase, I don't know if you've heard this before, that's where it came from. They would, like, the leader would say, are you strong? And then the guy would respond, I'm strong if you're strong. And then the leader would say, we're strong then. That's how it would finish. So I thought that was good, right? You're not like, we're not trying to rat anyone out. We're just trying to make each other better. And that's what Dr. Elko was trying to do. And in the moment you thought like, oh my gosh, like we're going to out somebody, but it made us better. It made us accountable. But obviously, Coach Fisher knew him. He was at Bama. Coach Fisher, through his experience and time with other coaches. But the guys that Norvell brings in, I don't know who he's brought in recently, but that all affects and it builds the aura, the heart of the team, and affects them on the field. So, but he's been doing great. The guys respond to him they're not making dumb penalties. They're not, acting out, where we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're contending. We look smart. We look poised. We look like a good team, kind of like back when I was there. So it's only, it's if he keeps on doing what he's doing, he's going to keep on getting what he's getting, which, is a lot of wins.
I love that. I mean, I didn't know that's where if you're strong, then,
yeah,
we're just not a Jameis original. Devastating.
It was kind of like a mixture, but it ended up, we said it in that situation, and that's what it reminds me of.
The final drive, right? He huddled everybody up against Auburn, and he asked them, "Are you strong?" And they said, "Strong if you're strong." He said,
man.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. It's cool to hear that backstory on that. And it's clear that Mike Norvell is building some of the same core values. I think that the mental toughness, that brotherhood, you can just see some of those. Yeah. By the way, shout out to Florida State cinematic recaps and they've been able to put out, because you see the love that Norvell has, I think, for each one of those kids and for those players. And I think the bonds, you could hear a couple of the guys yelling out, I love you guys, like at the end. And that's different. When you want to fight for your teammate, I think it's way different. And we hadn't seen that, I don't think, under Taggart, where guys, I think guys liked Willie, and I think guys liked their best friends and guys they were rooming with, or, different unit groups. But there wasn't that brotherhood on the team where it's like offense is fighting for defense, defense is fighting for offense. And we saw it throughout the year. When the offense wasn't clicking, the defense made stops in key moments. And when the defense couldn't stop anybody, sometimes during the Florida Gator game, the defense was having trouble making stops. The offense had their back too. And I think that's a beautiful thing to see. So my question to you, Curt, will go first to you, then to Roberto. Year 3 for Mike Norvell. Give him a grade.
I'm gonna say, you put me on the spot here. I'm gonna give him an A-. I mean, I think you're not gonna give someone an A+, but I mean, this was an important year for him. Think when you looked at the difficulty that you thought you saw on the schedule, I think most people would have been fine with 7 wins. 8 would have been great. I mean, I think getting 9 is a testament to him. I mean, I think you talked about, the culture he's built, and that's a big deal. And I think that helped them in kind of some of those dark moments when we may have seen previous teams kind of buckle under the pressure, or buckle under the adversity, or buckle under countless other things. And that's a testament to him. I mean, the offense, which is, even more, I think, his baby now than when Kenny Dillingham was here. I think Alex Atkins is involved, I know, but he's the primary play caller, maybe even more than he was the first 2 years here. And the talent has grown to a point where it looked like a Mike Norvell offense. I think there are some things that he may say he wants back, and some people might blame him for. But truthfully, a lot of the mistakes, I think the NC State decision to pass may be the most questionable one. But a lot of the mistakes, the pitch at the goal line against LSU, the middle 8 they lost against Clemson, was more his players not executing and kind of the roster still needs to grow a little more than it was things he did wrong. So I'm going to give him a solid A-.
No, I think that's fair. I would probably give him A, solid A.
What's better? Is it A? Is it A minus, A plus, or is it A? What's the?
That's true.
Is minus more or less than 0? Or
I mean, I guess if we're looking back when we were in school, A minus would be what, 90?
It's worse. It'd be like 90 to 92. You're giving him like a 93 to 97.
Okay. All right.
We were not the purpose.
But the thing is, when it was in school, like some teachers would say A minus was 90 to 93. Other A minus was like 87 to 92. Like it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But, all right. I would say. So then, I don't want to give him a B plus. I would probably say A minus as well. I think that's a great pick. Just because coming in with what he inherited and being a head coach is a tough job, man. Like you got to, not only are you running the team, you're running the coaches. You got to make sure everything's in check. Everyone, including the players and the coaches, are looking to you. Like, what's your decision? What do you like? What are we doing here? And he does not only, and this is kind of like where, I would understand how much, Coach Fisher was going through, because sometimes we would walk out of practice and I'd be like, "Hey, coach, like, how you doing?" And he just walked by and he'd be talking to himself, and I'm like, "Cool, all right, cool." But he's all like, he's thinking about, okay, what plays am I calling? What's my starting drive? And it's just like, oh my gosh, like obviously, like he's getting paid a lot, but there's a lot of responsibility, recruiting, dealing with your own family, like trying to manage time. It's tough. And coming in, trying to not only, coming in after you won a national championship, yeah, I guess it's better, but trying to also recruit and then trying to also bring this program back to where it was before. I mean, I'd give him an A+ on that. The things that, like what you said is what brings him down to an A-. Some of the play calling, and obviously he knows more than, what we know, what I know. I just remember the coach I played for and the calls he make. I think I'm more on the traditional side where, more conservative, where we punt, let the defense, make a play. I think he's sometimes very aggressive in situations. Obviously, the kicking game was a little different this year. That has to go into effect. He's watching the guys every day. Obviously, his decision at the end is the best decision. But if I would look at it, some of the play calling, that pitch, you mentioned it, Curt. But either way, I mean, he's in the A's and he's had a great year. I don't have anything bad to say about him over, like, really in the long run. If I'm really nitty gritty, trying to break down, those would be the things that I would say. But obviously, he's not Jimbo. He's a different style coach. He's a more modern coach. He's younger. So he does, he listens more to the probability of, this fourth down. What's the probability? So, hey, in the end, obviously, like, whatever works for you, but it's working for him. And we'll see how he continues, the last game of the season and into next year and the next couple years.
I'm giving him an A+. I mean, I know, and the reason is you've got to give him the grade based on what the expectation was. And I mean, you're not going to give him an A+ if you had Georgia or Clemson or Bama level expectations going into the year. But I think most people's optimistic predictions were 9-3 at best. A lot of 8 and 4s, even more 7 and 5s. And if we're going to go on that 7 and 5, 8 and 4 train, he beat that. I mean, he beat LSU, check. Beat both rivals, check. 5-game win streak to end the year. You win 9 games and you're about to win your 10th maybe in a bowl game. Guys, based on the expectations, I give him an A+. Obviously, the scale's going to move next year, right? Like now, at the bar at
the benchmarks have gotten a lot higher.
Roberto, you came to play at Florida State. You know the expectations. Now, if you thought FSU fans were, hungry, you've given them. You gave a dog a steak because here we go. next year, Florida State fans, especially if Jordan Travis comes back, especially if Trey Benson and Johnny Wilson and you get Jared Verse coming back, and now we're talking, right? Like now we're talking about a team that's expected to win the ACC. I don't care about Clemson next year.
Yeah.
We need to get over that hump and knock off a program who, by the way, looks like it's starting to hit that downfall at Clemson. Dabo lost his assistants. Anyone who knows anything about football knows a good program is based off how good your assistants are and how quickly you can reload once those assistants get head coaching jobs. So Clemson will be vulnerable. So I'm giving them an A+. We could keep conversing on just the grade of this season, but I wanted to, just because we're about 5 to 10 minutes away from wanting to wrap this pod and this show up. Let's go through some of our favorite moments from the season. Maybe a favorite game or a favorite moment that you liked from this year. Roberto, if you want to kick it off, or Curt, whichever one, and I'll go last.
Curt, if you have one, I'm still thinking. Go ahead.
And there's a few. I think it's easy to start at LSU. And I mean, the sliding doors moment on the season, that win, which has aged really well. And I mean, coming on the block kick, there's Finn making an appearance back here of my shoulder.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, but I think the block kick, I mean, is a definite sliding doors moment for this season. I mean, I think you take that win off, it's obviously probably changes. Who knows what it changes? Who knows what that did for the confidence of this team? Who knows what it did in quite a few ways? And I think that's a win. I mean, I think it was we thought a chance for Florida State to be back on a national stage, and I think in a way set a tone for this season.
I think I would say there's a lot of big moments. LSU was a big moment coming out, starting the season off right with that win. But I would say the hype that was built, where were we 4-0? It was up, and then we go 3 losses in a row. But the way they came back after those 3 losses, the last 4 games of the season?
5 games, 5-game win streak to end.
5 games. The way they played was consistent. Everything was rolling. It was very impressive. I would say from the first 4 wins of the season, after those 3 losses, and how they responded and how they finished off the season. Obviously, there's a lot of big plays that we can talk about in there, but I would just say overall that last third of the season was spectacular football, penalty-free for the most part, efficient, and a good way to end the season. And we have one more. We got time to heal the guys before we play. Speaking about, we can talk about what bowl game we're going to play in. Hopefully they play. Hopefully they play close here. No, I mean, the way they capped off the season, that last third, very impressive, and gets the Seminole fan base very excited for what's to come.
My favorite personal game, I think, just because LSU, I think that's going to be a consensus for a lot of the fan base. But my favorite game was probably Louisville. Just everything that could have gone wrong did in that game. Guys were dropping like flies, injuries all over. Jordan Travis goes down.
Tate Rodemaker.
And people were crapping on Tate for multiple years. This was like every time Tate had come in, it hadn't gone well for him. And you had no reason to believe that Tate Rodemaker would channel Tom Brady, and it was like Rams Moss with Johnny Wilson. And all of a sudden, it is my favorite moment, I think, as a Seminole fan for a few years in football. I felt so happy for that kid, his family. That's my favorite game. He looked unbelievable. He was hitting throws that had all of our mouths wide open. I remember calling Jerry Cutts at halftime of the Louisville game, and I was melting down. I had a few drinks in my system, and I was battling COVID at the time. I was in quarantine, and I was going nuts. I'm like, why are we throwing the ball deep with Tate? How dare we? What is this game plan? And then he comes out in the second half, and he shut me up. He shut every FSU fan up, all the naysayers. And he had Louisville's head coach just like scratching his head. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And that, to me, like that, I think was the night that FSU believed as a program that they had taken the next step.
Well, it just goes to show how much, I mean, him and AJ Duffy, I mean, we got a good backup and a good third. I mean, that's more hype for the future. Right.
Roberto, what was the vibe like when Sean McGuire beats Clemson?
Oh,
like, in that locker room, like, it didn't matter who was at quarterback. Y'all were some bad boys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we were. But it goes to show, what you were saying, where, okay, we have a backup quarterback in, everyone has to step up around him and play a little bit better, to help him out, right? Okay, offense isn't producing, the defense has to produce, right? We got your back. We're going to help everyone, right? And, everyone knew, like, okay, Sean was a great quarterback, very intelligent, very smart. Maybe, obviously no one knew the plays he could make, but we would watch him at practice. He could make the throws. He could do everything, right? But at the end of the day, he's not Jameis Winston. It's a different style. And for him to be able to stick in there and us to come out with the victory, we rallied. And, I mean, he was a great quarterback, great player, very intelligent. And it's the same thing that what Tate did. And it's just good to see that.
Yeah, and that night was big for Florida State, for this program and for the foundations that they were trying to build and the climb, right? Like Norvell keeps talking about the climb. They climbed a few rungs of the ladders that night. And it turns out Louisville's not as bad as we thought they were early in the season. They ended up cracking the top 25 up until Kentucky beat the out of them this past weekend. But Louisville was trending upwards for a couple of weeks. So let's talk about the college football playoff. Well, maybe more along the lines of bowl games for FSU. I say college football playoff because the rankings did come out, and I have them. I built it for it. Here you go. Florida State ranked number 13 in the college football playoff poll that was released about 30 minutes ago or an hour ago, and 14th in the AP poll. But let's talk about where FSU might be headed. It should be late January, right? I mean, sorry, late December, early January, wherever they're going. But who do we want to see? Like, what are you guys hoping for? Type of team, bowl game, location, all of that stuff.
I mean, Florida, somewhere in Florida would be good for a lot of people. Obviously, I have the luxury where if it were the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte or if it were the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, I would probably still get to go and get my travel paid for. It's, I guess, one of the job perks. But no, it's not the case for a lot of people. That people who would love to go if it's in Orlando or Jacksonville would probably not get to do that if it was San Diego. But I mean, both those Florida ones too are could be really exciting. I mean, obviously, we talked about it some on some of the sidelines a few days ago, but the Gator Bowl would be against an SEC team, which, I mean, obviously be going for your third SEC win of the season. And looking at who the potential opponents are, I mean, it would be probably a game that you're favored to win. I mean, you're going to end up as quite possibly a top 10 team who, just because of the way things play out, are just outside of the kind of New Year's Six, because it's not done straight by rankings. There's the rules that go into it. But I mean, an SEC team or even like a team like a Texas or Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl, I mean, a brand like that, both of those would be opportunities for sure.
I mean, obviously we hope it's close for the fan base to travel. I mean, I see here it's in San Diego, the San Diego Credit Union Holiday Bowl versus Oregon. The Cheez-It Bowl has always been in contention in Camping World versus Texas Tech or the Texas Longhorns. But the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, if we go there, honestly, I might make that trip, man. Charlotte, when I was in Charlotte with the Panthers, I love that state. I mean, I love the city. It's a good vibe, good time while I was there. Yeah. And, you get to feel a little bit of cold weather. So that would be fun.
See Mike Norvell get dunked in mayo. They dumped the tub of mayo on the winning coach.
Do
so,
they?
Yes, they started that last year with Shane Beamer, and I think Norvell would be game to play along with that. I think he realizes it's a way to just garner some fun goodwill.
Oh yeah, that would be
warm
fun.
Up, by the way, a little warm up game for Florida State to get used to that stadium for next year's ACC title game.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I like how you're thinking.
You kind of have a walkthrough.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Those guys haven't seen that. Those guys haven't seen that stadium.
No, they have not.
We would see it regularly every year. Okay, we're going back. Okay.
Next year it's not divisions too. Remember that.
Right. You might
Start of the 3-5-5.
Yeah,
It's just the two best records. And Florida State's ACC schedule is looking a little. I mean, there's no Louisville on there. There's no NC State on there. It's VT and Duke instead. Pitt's on there. It's not the toughest schedule.
Ooh.
If Miami can't make an ACC title game, well, they made one, right?
They made one. They didn't win it, but yes, they made one.
They got their ass beat. Remember that? That was quick. I cursed again, which means I got to put not friendly for kids on this.
Right at the end, too. Right at the end.
1 hour and 45 minutes into it, and I was doing.
Sorry if you have your children in the car.
Yeah, my bad, y'all. My bad. They've heard worse at public schools. Get out of here. Anyway, I think for me, wherever they go, I want it to be regional for Florida State. I would hate it for them to have to go to the Holiday Bowl. Not because I think that the matchup won't be good. It probably would be the highest profile matchup in San Diego. It's a beautiful location. And it would be on Fox, which would be kind of cool for Florida State to be on that Fox platform and the graphics and all that. That would be really cool. However, bowl games are a reward for not just the players, but for the fan base. They are there to keep the fans in mind. That is why bowl games usually select regional to maximize ticket sales. I want Florida State fans to be able to pack the house wherever the stadium is. If that's in Jacksonville, there will be a ton of Noles fans hungry to be in that stadium and pack out the Jaguar Stadium. What's the name of, by the way, guys, now? Is it TIAA Bank?
Yeah.
TIAA? Is it
TIAA
two A's?
Bank, yeah. Something like that.
That's right.
Right. If it goes to Orlando and the Cheez-It Bowl, Florida State will pack that stadium out. Preview of FSU, LSU again. So we'll be back in that stadium to start the year next year. But I would like this team I would like this fan base to be able to travel. Charlotte wouldn't suck. I think a lot of Noles would make that trip. And I think Dallas, even though the Cotton Bowl at this point seems unlikely, that wouldn't be the worst either. I think Florida State fans would make plans to go to that game. Either way, a high-profile opponent would be awesome, right? Whether that's Texas, whether that's Oklahoma, whether that's an SEC team somewhere. South Carolina would be a lot of fun. And Spencer Rattler down in Jacksonville if that's the game. But that's my hope. So whichever it'll be, Curt, I know you'll be there covering. Berto, I'm sure you'll find a way.
Yeah.
Unless it's in San Diego, I think.
San Diego, yeah, that might be a stretch.
I think I would make an effort to go to any of the other ones.
Oh, yeah.
If it's not anything, Texas and more East Coast.
I think Florida State fans in general would too, simply because, it's not like this has been a yearly occurrence like it was for the longest time. Like when it's a yearly thing, you're like, do I really need to go to fill in the blank city?
Yeah. Well, I'll go next year. We haven't.
Exactly. It's like next year it might be in a New Year's 6. I'll wait for that.
Yeah.
Well, Herbert, Herbert, if we do go to the Holiday Bowl and we play Oregon, I think there's a Berto remembers good and what, dude. That was the worst.
Too soon.
It's been almost 10 years, my guy.
I know.
Are we old? What happened?
Oh my goodness, man!
Wouldn't that would be sweet, wouldn't it, to give them a little bench?
Yeah.
So I hear you, Herbert. Appreciate it.
Honestly, though, San Diego is not a bad city. It's a beautiful city.
Petco Park, which is the Padres.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I think it would be like a good, it's a little vacation, go see the Seminoles out there. I think it would, it would be fun. The flight's going to be like 5 hours, but
there are West Coast Noles right now that are hoping for that.
Oh, yeah.
There's a group of West Coast Noles that are hoping for that.
I still shout out to the San Diego FSU booster or club out there. They gave me a shirt. They gave me a shirt with their logo when I was out there with the Chargers.
We got another, by the way, we've got another Oregon. Oh man, there's some people that are hungry for Oregon. I think
we'll find
even though they're like both schools are multiple coaches removed. That's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Oh, Bama.
Bama's going to be in a New Year's Six. Apparently, maybe the playoff.
Boys, Florida State could beat Bama. I will take. I think right now
it's not going to happen because they're going to be in a New Year's Six bowl. But I tend to agree because I feel like a lot of Bama players would opt out if they're not in the playoffs. Like just because of their standard and what it's been. Does Bryce Young play in that game? So
that would be interesting.
I think it's possible, but it's also definitely be careful what you wish for situation.
Business decision.
All right. When is Curt, before we wrap up, when is the bowl games all being announced?
Sunday.
What time?
Throughout the day. There's not like I think the New Year's Six get announced on that playoff special at like noon or 12:30, and then just like bowls leak throughout the day. I think Brett McMurphy tweets a decent amount of them, like he's normally on that. So we'll see. But throughout the day, I can't put a time on it Sunday.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is we're going to do a bowl reaction show. So we'll have it for Sunday at 6 o'clock. Roberto, you're welcome to hop on. We'll do it over StreamYard and get your thoughts. But that'll be the whole crew. Pat Burnham. Mark Salva. We'll have Jerry, Bob, Curt, myself, and we'll all talk about where Florida State's next football game will be. Want to say thank you guys for watching really all season long. We're not done with First and Nole. We'll do a couple more during football season, obviously, and a few more probably in the off season as well as we get set for spring ball and jumping into next year. But this has been fun, guys. I don't know about Curt, Roberto. This has been a blast to interact with the fans and be able to do this.
Definitely. I've had fun. It's only the beginning. I'm excited for Sunday's show. I might just buy my ticket live. Whatever, if we go to Charlotte or San Diego. So
you've had to buy a ticket? You don't have the hookup? Come on now.
I'm saying buy my plane ticket if we go to Charlotte or San Diego.
I thought you were saying a game ticket. I was like, Roberto Aguayo can't get a
No, yeah. I just gotta buy my plane ticket and then we'll be there. That'll be fun.
Curt, anything you're writing this week fans should keep an eye out for or be on the lookout for in the Osceola?
We'll be at practice tomorrow and Thursday. We'll have coverage from there. They're opening up the 2 practices this week. I think they're doing a few before. I think the coaches are hitting the road doing some recruiting, and then the transfer portal opens Monday next week. I think the coaches will be doing a lot of that while the players are taking finals. But, a few practices before they know where they're going, and then I'm sure it changes a bit going forward once they know who the opponent is.
So if you've enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the Osceola's YouTube page. We have gone over 1,000 subscribers, and we started out the year with about 70 or so subscribers to the YouTube channel. So really excited about that. This podcast has done really well. Seminole Sidelines has been killing it. I hope you enjoyed Charlie Ward being on Sunday night, and we really do appreciate you. We're on Apple Pods. We're on Spotify, wherever else you get your favorite podcasts. And again, we hope you subscribe to the Osceola.com. And we're going through I believe, Curt, we have a Cyber Monday type deal right now. It's like, is it Rivals 22?
It expired last night, I think.
Oh man, I'm so sorry, guys.
Too late.
I'm sure there could very well be another one. I don't want to promise, but there could very well be another one.
If you sweet talk us with NIL deals, we might hook you up. Look, we all have a price. Trust me. Either way, Berto, good stuff from you, man. Curt, great stuff. I'm Ariya Massoudi. Appreciate you guys watching. And until we talk to you again, this has been First and Nole.